Stop what you're doing for 10 seconds. Close the other tab. Put the phone down. Because this is not a chart story. This is a logistics story. And logistics stories are the ones that break markets at 2 a.m. while everyone is asleep. Here's the headline we re-dealing with today. Switzerland froze silver exports at 2 a.m. and the refineries effectively went dark. Not slower, not delayed, frozen. The kind of move that sounds boring until you realize one detail. Switzerland isn't a random country in the silver trade. Switzerland is the choke point. Think about how silver becomes deliverable. Most mind, silver isn't a neat investment bar. It's concentrate, doré, scrap feed, semi-processed material. Someone has to refine it. Someone has to turn it into the exact formats the market accepts. Someone has to stamp it, certify it, and push it into the global bloodstream. If that hub clamps down, the paper world can keep printing numbers while the real world runs out of metal. And the reason this story is so explosive is the phrase, "I have the customs notice." Whether you believe every line of that document or not, you should understand the implication. If a customs hold is real, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. The pallet is still stuck. The truck still doesn't move. The buyer still doesn't receive the silver. So today we're going to do 3 things. We're going to walk through what an export freeze actually means in physical terms. We're going to explain why a government would do it in the middle of the night. And we're going to map what the next 30, 60 days look like if that bottleneck stays closed. And I am going to ask you for one thing in the comments at the end. Do you think this is a temporary review or the first visible crack in a much bigger supply chain problem? Because if it's a crack, then the price you see on your screen is the least important number in the room. Let's make this real and practical. What does exports halted mean when you strip away the drama? It means metals that was already scheduled to leave the country gets pulled into a review process. It means shipments and customs become inventory that can't be delivered. It means the market shifts from how much does it cost to can you get it? And in metals, the moment you cross into availability territory, premiums and delays take over the conversation, not spot prices. Now understand what a threshold like 1,000 kilos per shipment really does. That's not retail. That's commercial flow. That's the size that moves between refineries, mints, dealers, and industrial users. If a rule targets that size, it's not aimed at some guy buying 10 ounces. It's aimed at the arteries of the system. And once the arteries narrow, the body doesn't die instantly. It stumbles first. Dealers start quoting longer delivery times. Mints start getting raw input uncertainty. Industrial buyers start calling procurement meetings that sound calm but feel like panic. Then the public notices last, as always. Now here, it's the uncomfortable truth most channels want to say out loud. An export freeze doesn't have to be permanent to do permanent damage. Even a 2-week hold can trigger a chain reaction because the silver market runs on tight timelines and just-in-time inventory. You don't need months of disruption to cause a shortage narrative. You need a few weeks of uncertainty stacked on already tight inventories. And that's why a 2 a.m. freeze matters. It's not only the metal that's frozen, it's trust. Contracts depend on delivery schedules. Financing depends on delivery schedules. Manufacturing depends on delivery schedules. When those schedules become maybe, people behave differently. They overorder, they hoard, they pay up, they secure supply just in case. And that just in case behavior is how shortages become real, even if the original disruption was temporary. So before we talk motives, I want you to lock this into your brain. The market doesn't T-break when the price spikes. The market breaks when delivery becomes unreliable. And a customs hold is delivery unreliability written in bureaucracy. Now let's talk about why a place like Switzerland would do this in the first place. Because this is where people spin off into fantasy. It doesn't need to be a movie. It can be boring, rational, and still devastating. There are a few plausible drivers that can exist at the same time. First, domestic priority. If a government believes an industrial input might become scarce, it will prioritize domestic needs. Silver is not just jewelry and coins. Silver is critical for electronics, medical, specialized manufacturing, and certain defense-related components. You don't need a war to trigger strategic materials language. You just need enough global stress that policymakers start thinking in months, not headlines. Second, contract disputes and allocation fights. When physical premiums jump, somebody loses money on old contracts. Some buyers locked fixed prices when silver was low. Some sellers look at spot and think, we can't honor this without bleeding. In those moments, governments get pressured by industrial lobbies to enforce supply continuity. An export review becomes a tool to slow discretionary outflows and make sure essential allocations happen first. Third, inventory math. This is the one that hurts. If refineries report low vault inventory while demand is high, policymakers see a risk scenario. If you only have a limited buffer, you don't keep shipping as if nothing is happening. You pause, you count, you review, you protect the buffer. And fourth, Geopolitical supply chain anxiety. The world is trending toward commodity nationalism, export controls, and secure supply. If you think that sounds dramatic, look around. Export controls are the new normal across multiple sectors. When the world gets tense, countries stop thinking like merchants and start thinking like fortresses. Now here is the key point. I am not asking you to blindly believe a dramatic transcript. I'm asking you to understand the incentives. If a customs notice exists and it references strategic materials or emergency provisions, the intent is simple. Control the flow. Control the inventory. Control the risk. And once you accept that incentives exist, you can start predicting behavior without needing perfect information. Because markets respond to policy risk by front-running it. Industrial users don't wait for confirmation, they secure supply. Dealers don't wait for official clarity, they raise premiums. Mints don't wait for the situation to resolve, they ration production. That's how a 2 a.m. hold becomes a global story by week 3. Let's map the cascade step by step so you can see where the pressure shows up first and where it shows up last. Step 1, dealers and wholesalers get hit first because they run on thin inventory. They don't like holding massive stock because it ties up capital and adds storage risk. So they rely on scheduled replenishment. If shipments are held, they don't immediately run out, but the pipeline stops feeding them. That's when you see subtle changes. Delivery times extend. Pre-order buttons appear. Products quietly move to limited quantity. Step 2, mints and fabricators feel it next because they need steady, refined input. They don't just need silver. They need silver in specific forms: grain, blanks, bars, industrial feed. If their input uncertainty rises, they either slow output or raise premiums to manage demand. That yes, when retail buyers get angry because the posted price starts diverging from the story they tell themselves about spot. Step 3, industrial users panic the quietest and the hardest. They don't tweet, they don't post memes, they call suppliers, they offer to pay more, they lock longer contracts, they buy extra months of inventory if they can. And when industry starts competing with retail for the same physical pool, retail loses almost every time because industry buys size. Step 4, the paper market lags, and that lag creates confusion. People stare at spot and say, nothing is happening. Meanwhile, physical premiums and lead times scream, something is happening. That dislocation is where narratives are born. Some people call it manipulation. Some people call it a shortage. Some people call it nothing. But the only thing that matters is whether you can source metal at scale on schedule. Step 5. The public finds out last, usually through shortages, limits, and headlines. When mainstream outlets finally mention temporary export controls or customs review, the first wave of buyers doesn't read nuance. They hear one word: controls. Then they do what humans always do when they fear scarcity. They buy now so they don't regret it later. And that wave is what turns tightness into a frenzy. Now here is what I want you to watch over the next 30-60 days if this story is real or even partially real. Premiums rising while spot stays flat. Lead times extending across multiple dealers at the same time. Mints rationing output or suspending certain products. Industrial language shifting towards supply security. And any sign that the review period gets extended or becomes case by case. Those are the signals that the hold isn't just a pause, it's a new policy posture. Now we are at the part where I stop talking like a narrator and talk like a person. If you're watching this, you probably feel that weird tension between this sounds huge and why isn't everyone screaming about it? That's normal. Because the physical market always whispers first and screams later. The first signs are never fireworks. The first signs are annoying. Paperwork, delays, limits, premiums. At 2 a.m., notice nobody wants to talk about publicly because nobody wants responsibility. But whether you believe every detail or not, ask yourself one simple question. If a major refining hub even hints at export controls, what does that do to behavior? It makes everyone downstream act defensively. And defensive behavior is the real driver of shortages, not headlines. So here is my comment question, and I want short answers, no essays. Do you think this is a temporary review that clears in a couple of weeks? Or do you think this is the beginning of ongoing silver export control politics? Type exactly one word, TMP, if you think it's temporary. Control if you think it's the start of a longer policy shift. And here is the second question that separates real-world thinkers from chart watchers. If you ran a factory that needs silver, would you pay a premium today or gamble that supply is normal next month? Answer, pay or gamble. I want to see where this audience stands. Because if Switzerland truly clamped down at 2 a.m., the story isn't silver price. The story is silver access. And when access becomes the story, markets reprice faster than people's emotions can catch up.